Welcome to Keystone Cold Cases, a podcast that aims to reignite cold cases across Pennsylvania. We are here to bring attention to the stories that have faded into the background, honoring the victims and their families along the way. Each episode is a step closer to understanding the truth, because every case deserves more than just a passing glance, and every voice deserves to be heard. Hey, it's Shan.
Hey, it's Melissa, and you are stuck with me today because I will be hosting and I have a wild case to tell you. And personally, I kind of think it's solved, but technically, I guess it's not. But before we get into that, just a few friendly reminders. First, we would love it if you could please give us a like, a rating, a review, and subscribe to Keystone Cold Cases. It helps us out a ton, and then you won't miss an episode. And second, we have a Patreon. It is only $5 a month, and it's super fun. You get really cute, fun little gifts every couple months. You get a shout out and so much more. So don't miss out on that. And finally, we want to know what you guys, the listeners, how you're feeling about our new additions to the KCC lineup, which includes the monthly Mood and Beyond the Keystone, because we are now releasing an episode each Friday. So let us know your thoughts. And now I'm going to shut up about this stuff and get to case-related stuff. So usually I give a little preview to my case, but this case actually starts as a Jane Doe. So I'm going to make you wait. But first off, quick trigger warning for murder and dismemberment, just an FYI. And then for my sources, I used about 1 million articles on newspapers.com, which will be listed on our website. But one of my main sources today was a season 7 episode of Forensic Files entitled Scout's Honor. And all right, I love me some Forensic Files. And not only did that show get me into true crime, but it's also like my wind down at the end of the night kind of show. But this episode, oh my God, it is definitely outdated in the way they talk about the victim. The entire show puts so much emphasis on the fact that our victim seemed to suffer from alcohol and substance disorder, and there was so much victim shaming due to her lifestyle. And I get it was the 80s and the times were different, but I was still really taken aback, honestly, by the attitude towards our victim. And I'm not the only one who felt this way, because there was actually an entire Reddit thread dedicated to this episode entitled, quote, Scout's Honor, the most infuriating episode of the series, end quote. And there were 1 billion comments on the YouTube video of this episode that echoed my feelings. One user wrote, quote, this is the first episode where the victim didn't light up a room with her smile, end quote. And another user wrote, quote, the way these investigators talked about her, you would think she was the killer and not the victim, end quote. So I never thought I would say this, but shame on you, Forensic Files. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. But I did want to start out with that warning, should you choose to watch the episode.
I can't stand it. I can't stand it when they have anything to say about the victim, because no one on this planet is perfect. There is no perfect person. We have all done things that are not great, or maybe make us seem like not a great person. And guess what? It doesn't mean that somebody gets to hurt us, and it's okay.
I literally say that. I say every single person who's listening has made a mistake, and the difference is that we got lucky and our Jane Doe did not.
Right.
It's horrific how they talk of the episode. I don't know if it's pulled from the air. It should be if it's not, but we'll get into it. So for now, it's May 27th. It's the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend in 1984, and I think it's about 3 p.m. One source said noon, another said the morning, but the majority consensus was 3 p.m., so that's what we're going with. And we have a lovely gentleman, well, I decided he was lovely, who is spending his long weekend doing some fishing on the Juniata River, which is just a few minutes north of the town of Duncannon in Perry County, Pennsylvania. And our fisherman friend, he is just spending some time in the great outdoors, just waiting for the fish to bite, which, to be honest, kind of sounds awful to me. I went fishing once. Yeah, I was bored as shit, but this dude was pumped about it. So he's walking along the riverbed, probably enjoying like the serene tranquility of Mother Nature. And I just want to tell you about this area so you can picture it. So we have the river and then a short riverbank, and then we have a hill or an embankment, I guess. And then at the top of that is a road. So like if you're on the road, which was old Route 22, you can look down the hill and you can see the Juniata River, which is actually a tributary of the Susquehanna River.
Okay.
Our gentlemanly friend, he's out there fishing, minding his business, and he sees this cardboard box, like just discard it near the edge of the river. And our friend here, he's like, an abandoned box in the middle of nowhere. I feel like I should open it. So to that I say, Mr. Lovely Sir Fisherman, we do not go around opening random boxes, because you know what we find? In this case, he found a black trash bag. But then inside of that black trash bag, he found a torso. A human torso. No head, no arms, and the legs have been cut at the knees. Like, imagine just walking along the river and there's a torso. So like, the fisherman could...
sorry, not only did he open the box, but in it was a trash bag, and he was like, yo, what's in this trash bag? I need to know. I can't just let this lie. I mean, like, thank God, because he did find this poor woman. However, like, what are people thinking?
I would be horrified that there would be a torso in there. Like, that's the first thing that would come to my brain. So our fisherman wasn't even sure, actually, if the torso was a man or a woman.
Oh, boy.
And it was bad. And like a word of warning, if you Google this case, there are non-edited, non-blurred out crime scene pictures, uncensored, and they're horrific. So be careful. I accidentally stumbled across them and I will be forever haunted. So that is your warning.
I feel like this always happens to you and only you.
Always!
Like, this never happens to anybody else doing a case, and you always get these cases somehow.
Every single time I'm like, oh, let me just Google this case. And it's like, bam, horrible, horrific crime scene picture. And I'm like, okay, could have done without that.
Exactly.
I don't know what websites I'm going on, but I need to stop.
Yeah, pick some new ones.
Seriously. So fisherman gets a hold of the police and they get to the scene and they're able to determine it is a female torso. And that's pretty much it, because our torso has no identification. We don't know how our victim died, other than clearly it's a homicide. There's like no purse. She doesn't have any ID on her. However, there were a few identifying features. So some of them we wouldn't find out until the autopsy, which we'll get to, but the torso was mostly naked, except it was wearing a pair of designer jeans, underwear, and a plastic belt with a very distinctive belt buckle. And it was like a big belt buckle, and it had an astrological sign on it, but don't ask me which one it was, because in the Forensic Files episode, they kept showing a belt buckle with the zodiac sign for Scorpio, but like that wasn't the real belt buckle, and we'll find out our victim was born in August, which I'm pretty sure is not Scorpio. So no, I don't know what I wanted to know so badly. Yeah, I wanted to know so badly what astrological sign was on it, but no one ever shared that. So police are investigating, and I do want to mention the lead investigator on the case was a man by the name of Trooper William Link, and Link and his team can tell that the box was dumped from up on the road. So like someone was driving along, they pulled over and pushed this box down the embankment hill thing, and it ended up sliding or like rolling about 19 feet down to the riverbank, and then the box gets caught on a tree. And like police can tell this because they can see the path that the box took down the hill, because the grass is flattened, like the way it came down. Yeah.
So then that would have had to have been pretty soon before.
Exactly. Okay. And the trooper's able to tell that the box had been dumped and like fallen down the embankment at some point after the morning dew was on the grass, because the grass was dry. So that helps a lot with the timeline. So the grass is flattened and it's dry. So, like,
Okay.
it was definitely not super long ago. So for now, we're going to call our torso Jane Doe. So the police know that someone went through great lengths to hide Jane Doe's identity. Like, her head, arms, and legs are just completely removed. And I'm not going to keep you in suspense, but the rest of Jane Doe's remains have never been found, like, to this day. So, as of now, we have 3 big questions. Who is our victim? What killed our victim? And, of course, who killed our victim? And the police know that we probably can't figure out who the killer is if we don't even know who our victim is or how she died. But unfortunately, it would take almost a year to answer any of these questions. So, another thing police would need to figure out is where the murder took place. Like, there was no blood at the scene, so clearly it wasn't done anywhere in the vicinity. And because of how the body was found, police are like, okay, this killer would have needed a substantial amount of time to dismember the body, like, without being caught by someone.
Right.
And the killer would also need a private place to conduct the murder and dismemberment. And not to be morbid, but that's going to make a mess. So where would you do that, you know? And just to keep this in mind, this was mentioned in a few sources. And one of the police officers mentioned it as well. But it's kind of strange that Jane Doe's torso is just, like, thrown off the road and not super hard to find. But the rest of her remains were hidden well enough that they still haven't been found. So, like, did the killer want her body, her torso to be found? Or did the killer want people to know she was dead? But we never find out. But, like, once they talked about that, I was like, that's so true. Like, why was that so kind of easy to find? And everything else, we don't have any idea where it is.
Well, and I don't know what you're going to tell me next, but I also go to, like, 2 people.
Yeah.
Like, maybe 2 people were involved. They both had responsibilities in trying to cover it up, and they thought that was a way to help cover it up. And, like, one was pretty good at it and one was not.
One was lazy about it. Yeah.
Right.
So, right now, all we have is questions, and we're just going to continue to have questions, but soon we're going to get a couple answers. So, after she's found, Jane Doe was autopsied at Carlisle Hospital, and the question of how did our Jane Doe die, like, it's at the top of our question list, because at this point, even the autopsy team can't figure out how she died, which kind of makes me assume it was some sort of head trauma, because if there's no issues with her torso, then what else could it have been other than, I would feel like, something that happened to her head?
I guess, like, it could depend on, like, how much of her, this is so gross, how much of her neck was there. Like, could she have been asphyxiated and, like...
Yeah, I guess you're right. And I'm going to be honest, I did not stare long enough at the crime scene pictures. I clicked out pretty quickly to be able to kind of tell. So...
yeah, I don't know.
Something they did discover, though, was that Jane Doe had had sex shortly before her death as semen was found inside of her, but DNA testing, like, in general, and then DNA results being used in court cases was still a few years off. I think it was in 87. So, unfortunately, that wasn't going to be a whole lot of help. But some other information they did discover during the autopsy. Number 1, the suspected murder weapon was a, quote, heavy-bladed object, end quote. And later, the prosecutor of the case would mention the possible use of an axe, which is bone-chillingly horrific. Number 2, the victim had not been dead very long, maybe 2 to 3 days.
3, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. That feels long for them to have found her quickly after she was left there.
Maybe you should have been teaching classes at the autopsy school. We'll just leave it at that for now.
You can call me Dr. Shan.
Dr. Shan. I love it. Oh, there was number 3. There was insect activity on the body, which we'll come back to, so stick a pin in that. And then 4, Jane Doe had a few identifying scars and moles on her body. Michael J. Shalanis, the Perry County coroner, he originally believed the victim had given birth via C-section and she had had her appendix removed at some point. We will find out later that the victim did in fact have a child. She had a son, but he was delivered vaginally. The C-section looking scar was due to an issue that she had like shortly after giving birth that they had to do emergency surgery. Of course, in the newspapers from the time, the paper was like, it was thought she gave birth via C-section, but determined she gave birth normally.
Oh,
I'm
gross.
like, okay, I don't think we need to normalize how we're giving birth.
A baby came out.
I think we can just...
She good. She did a great job.
It was a healthy baby. Yeah, I'm like, okay, I don't feel like that's the right word. This case is definitely, like, stuck in the 80s.
And this is just a guess because, like, sometimes when people say stuff on podcasts, I, like, Google what the heck they could be talking about. My guess would be is that she retained some of her placenta, which can, like, be very life-threatening, and then they have to, like, do surgery to remove it.
I think that's what it was. I don't have children, and the entire thought of giving birth freaks me out, so I try not to look into it. I missed that day in health class.
Wow, impressive.
Oh, yeah, I skipped that day. But, yeah, I think that's exactly what it was. So she had a scar that just kind of, I guess it was around her lower stomach that kind of looked similar to a C-section scar. The coroner also discovered that there were 3 moles on the victim that police hoped would ID our Jane Doe. And this is super gruesome, but the coroner also said that the body had been dismembered in a, quote, crude manner, end quote, which made me, and maybe this is only because I'm on a Jack the Ripper kick right now, but this makes me think that the killer was not someone who had medical knowledge. Yeah. But I feel like it could also rule out someone with an occupation like a butcher or something like that, because you would think someone with the knowledge of human anatomy and or animal anatomy would be able to dismember a body pretty methodically and cleanly.
Yeah, or even like a hunter, like, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I guess it's possible that they were like counter forensicing, whatever the right word is for that.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I was just like, I don't know, because I think Jack the Ripper could have been someone with medical knowledge because everything was done, like, so perfectly or whatever. So I'm like, oh, let me put on my detective hat. And I'm like, we can rule out
Dr.
doctors.
Shan and Detective Melissa.
Oh, my God. We're so odd. I was just going to say we should have a podcast about our adventures, but hey.
We're doing that.
Oh, my bad. Well, guys, tune in to our new podcast.
It's going to come out.
Dr. Shannon, Detective
Melissa. Come out every
Melissa.
7th Tuesday. Just kidding.
Exactly. It would be a great show.
There would be so many dogs.
So many dogs. Yeah, guys, Shannon's going to cut this out, but my 3 dogs here have been squeaking this entire episode. So if you do hear it, I apologize. So, get back to the insect activity that I mentioned earlier. The autopsy team brought in a forensic entomologist to assist with the case and, like, evaluate the insect activity on Jane Doe. And FYI, a forensic entomologist is a scientist specifically trained to use insects to solve crimes. They are able to use the predictable life cycle of the insect found on the victim or at the crime scene. It is not a job I could ever do, but it was pretty fascinating. Like, I really enjoyed researching this part until they started showing pictures of everything, and then I was like, okay, I'm
Fair.
out. So, yeah, this entomologist analyzed the findings, which he said were eggs, and he believed that they were that of the blue bottle neck flies and black bot flies, which are like everyday stupid run-of-the-mill flies that annoy the shit out of everyone. They're not special flies, they're normal flies, and I hate them. So the entomologist determined that, like, whatever stage of life the eggs were in, and he also had to take the weather conditions into account, but he thought that that meant that Jane Doe had been dead since late Friday night or early Saturday morning. And she was found on Sunday afternoon, so that kind of goes back to the 2 to 3 days hypothesis. Okay. So perhaps, Shan, you should also be teaching entomology classes.
I'm good. All I know about bugs is that they belong outside.
Yes, nowhere
End
near
of knowledge about bugs.
I'm down with that. So the time of death is obviously fantastic evidence, but we still don't know who our victim is. We don't know where she came from. We don't know pretty much anything else. So police tried multiple avenues to find out Jane Doe's identity, including searching the local missing persons reports, but they just kept striking out. So the Daily Item newspaper reported that the cardboard box, the one that Jane Doe was found in, the police thought maybe that could link them to who our victim was. But it was this big box, and the Daily Item newspaper thought it could be a cardboard box for shipping paper products like toilet paper or paper towels. But on the Forensic Files episode, they showed a picture of a big brown cardboard box with red lettering that said Lily, Lily. And I tried to read what was underneath it, but I couldn't see in any of the pictures. But it was for 1,000 pack of food containers. So there were also a couple pieces of interesting evidence on the box. So there was this small puncture hole in the cardboard, and it had some kind of grease on it. And even stranger, in this grease, there were little pieces of styrofoam. So police would eventually hypothesize that the box had been in the trunk of a car, and maybe it had gotten caught on the trunk latch when the killer was taking the box out of the car to throw down the embankment. So killer lifts the box up out of the trunk, hits the latch, and it pokes a hole in the box, and then the grease on the latch transfers to the cardboard.
Yeah.
And the size of it was pretty much the size of a standard trunk latch, I guess. The styrofoam itself is never really explained, other than they think maybe it came from whatever had been in the box at one point, or maybe it was packing foam or packing peanuts kind of thing.
Which is weird because why would you need packing peanuts for paper products or food containers? Because I'm imagining either plastic food containers, or if you're thinking paper products, I'm thinking Chinese container boxes. Those are still paper-ish.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking if they were the styrofoam boxes.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't feel I don't know. I don't know how the pieces of that would get transferred to the box, which would then get in the hole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't feel there should be chunks of styrofoam from these boxes just chilling in the... I don't know.
Yeah.
So, back to identifying our Jane Doe. One source mentioned that police were discussing taking pictures of her surgical scars to doctors in the area to see if any of them recognized their own work. And if you think about it, all they have is this torso. They can't compare fingerprints. They can't do dental records. So, again, they know someone went through a lot of trouble to hide Jane Doe's identity. Maybe not her body, but her identity for sure. So, police also had to consider that this murder was related to another murder of a young woman whose skeletal remains had been found only 5 years earlier on June 20th, 1979, basically in the same vicinity where our Jane Doe had been found. And, while this was certainly possible, police were eventually able to rule out that the cases were connected. But you can imagine that people around the area were pretty scared. That's two very upsetting, unsettling murders relatively close together, both location-wise and time-wise.
Well, and I'm sure, for some people who weren't scared, it made fishing easier because nobody else was around.
Oh my God, they were this is great. No one's out today. All the fish are biting. So eventually, after about 5 months, tips had really stopped coming in, and police had exhausted all leads. So on Tuesday, October 16th, 1984, Jane Doe was buried in an unmarked grave in a potter's field, which I feel is so fucking sad.
Yeah.
I hate the entire idea of someone being buried without a name. Like, how do you rest in peace when you've lost your entire identity? But I will say the coroner on this case, that Michael J. Shalanis that I mentioned earlier, he was interviewed a lot about this case, and it seems like the case really got to him. I think he cared a lot about our Jane Doe. And in regard to burying her, he told one of the papers, he said, quote, "Our investigation is not closed, but keeping the body no longer serves a purpose. I think everyone deserves a decent burial," end quote. He did attend the burial service, and this is so frigging sad, but in an article about the case from the Patriot newspaper, the author wrote, quote, "Perry County Coroner Michael A. Shalanis delayed the service a few minutes, waiting for a group of about 10 mourners who were expected to come from a New Bloomfield church. They never did," end quote.
I just got the chills. Ugh, that's horrible.
Right? Like, that hurts to hear. And you know what? I don't care that this was 40 years ago. Those people who bailed, if you're alive and listening, you suck. That was not a nice thing to do.
No. And it speaks so much to this man and, like, how much he cared and, like, what good work he was doing for these victims. Even if he wasn't always successful, you know, it really meant a lot to him.
It's true. And, like, I know we don't usually cover this much, like, about, if anything, about the funerals, but when I found the information, I just wanted to share it because I felt really badly for our Jane Doe, and I felt like it was important. And I'm sure that these types of funerals happen every day, and I don't feel like people think about that.
Yeah. Well, like you said, when it comes up and it moves you, like, and you realize it's not something we talk about very often, like, I feel the same way, that it's like, yeah, I do feel like I want to share that.
Yeah. The Reverend who did the service said about our victim, quote, "We don't know anything about this young woman, what her hopes were, or her dreams. We can only be reasonably sure she was dear to someone," end quote. And we will find out that she certainly was dear to people. So,
sorry. I do, though.
No, go ahead.
I do, though, like, like, that kind of always makes me sad, too. Like, we're so much more than who we are to other people. And so the fact that, like, she just was, like, that's what she was boiled down to, is, like, dear to someone because they didn't know anything about her. Like, not only who cared about her, but just in general, like, we're, you know, like, yes, I'm a daughter. I am a sister. I am these things, but who I am is so much more than that.
Well, and it always makes me sad, and especially with this case where you don't have that much information about the victim. Like, this Reverend obviously didn't have any information about our Jane Doe, but when I hear these cases, like, I want to know, like, what was the victim like when they were a kid? What was their favorite color? What was their favorite boy band? Or whatever. Like, so I feel like I always try to go heavy into victimology for that reason. And yeah, like, it makes me sad that the Reverend even says, like, we don't know what her hopes were or her dreams, and it's true. And as of right now, nobody does.
Yeah.
Well, as of right now in the case. So, right now, things are cold. Like, after the funeral, the case gets colder than Mariah Carey's reaction to being asked if she knew J-Lo. Ice cold. And the Forensic Files episode pissed me off because, and I love the narrator, Peter something or other. Love his voice, love him, don't know anything about him, but I love him. However, he goes, quote, "Jane Doe was buried and forgotten."
Oh.
Like, come on, Forensic Files. She was not forgotten, and we're going to find out that she was loved and she was missed. So this episode, it gets so much worse. So, all right, case is cold, but in March of 1985, police put like a little notice in the newspaper about Jane Doe in hopes of identifying her. They mentioned the moles on her body and the surgical scars. And I believe they also mentioned that distinctive astrological sign belt buckle that I had told you about earlier. And they don't really hold out much hope, but then about a month later, they get a phone call from a woman who would reignite this otherwise colder than my black heart case. And this phone call would lead to not one, but two trials. So The woman who called police in hopes of identifying Jane Doe gave police the name of her former sister-in-law who had vanished the year prior, right around Memorial Day weekend. The woman described her ex-sister-in-law and mentioned that not only the moles were similar to the moles on Jane Doe, but she also mentioned the Zodiac belt buckle. And the caller explained that the woman used to spend a lot of time hanging out in Harrisburg in the, quote, seedy side of town. And that because she would often disappear for weeks or even months, she had mostly lost touch with family, which partially explains why there was no missing persons report about her. But as I've said, we're going to come to see that there were people who missed her. She mattered. Everybody does. So now police have a name, and they're able to show the surgical scars to a doctor that she had once been under the care of, which confirmed the caller's suspicion that it was her ex-sister-in-law. So our Juniata River Jane Doe was 31-year-old mother of one, Edna Marie Rawlings Posey. So Edna, who had most recently been living in Virginia, had been in nearby Lancaster over the holiday weekend visiting her 12-year-old son who was staying with a family friend. So who is Edna Posey? Edna Marie Rawlings Posey was born in Waldorf, Maryland, which is about 45 minutes south of Washington, D.C., and she was born on August 19th, 1953, to her parents Walter Rudolph Rawlings and Mary Alice Smith Rawlings. And there isn't much known or mentioned or sourced about Edna's childhood, but at some point she turned into a little bit of a wild child. We all go through that stage.
I was going to say, don't we all?
Don't we all? Well, and like you and I both said earlier, anybody who wants to judge or look down on Edna, I can 100% promise that every single person listening has made a questionable decision in their life, and the only difference is that we were lucky and Edna was not. So, unfortunately, Edna did have some mental health struggles, and she suffered from alcohol and or substance dependency. Sources kind of said both. But, you know what? Again, in her defense, as someone who also struggles with mental health, it is not easy in 2025 to get help. So
Nope.
It was most definitely not easy in the early 80s. Not to mention the stigma that still surrounds mental health.
I am so sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to anyway. I just saw a video today on Instagram, and I had to send it to my brother because we unknowingly have been joking about this for years. The point of the video was this girl was basically saying that until recently, people weren't diagnosed with disorders or mental health issues. They were just given nicknames. And she was like, I have an aunt who every time she walks into the room, she slaps the floor and goes beep, and they just call her Tasmanian Teresa. Nobody helped her. God. They just gave everybody a nickname. And I swear that is my parents in their family and their extended families. My dad's always got a second cousin that this, that, and the other. And I'm and even I didn't even know I was doing it. I had this huge long conversation about my grandmother and how she talked funny, and everyone thought it was because she was from Central PA, we called it Pennsyltucky. And
oh my god.
And my fiance Bobby goes, did she have a speech delay? And I was like, oh my god, we've been making fun of her accent. My poor grandmother had a speech delay this whole time. We're being really mean. And so, yeah, I just feel
true.
Nobody got help. It was not a thing.
No, it's true. You're crazy Uncle Dave.
Yeah.
No, maybe Uncle Dave is legitimately, maybe he's struggling. Yeah, I get it. Well, again, and I mean, even now, I feel mental health is we're getting better about things. But, I mean, how long was 1984? Almost 41 years ago?
Yeah.
Jesus. If we're barely there now, we definitely weren't there in the 80s.
Right.
So there were rumors that Edna may have dabbled in sex work, but I maintain that those are rumors, and you know what? If she did, there's a very good chance that it was survival sex work to keep a roof over her and her child's head and to put dinner on the table. So, Edna did not have the best luck when it came to men, and this next part is incredibly shitty, but this is how Edna was described by the district attorney in the Forensic Files episode. Again, this is the district attorney, R. Scott Kramer, says in this episode, quote, "She was what generally would be perceived as a tramp.
Oh, God.
Unstable relationships, short term. Problems with alcohol and not having a stable home environment for her son, among other things." End quote. So, can you tell why I hated this episode?
You know, until I met the right person, I also was in unstable and short-term relationships. So,
I think most of us have been there. Yeah. Well, I'm just glad that this lovely, lovely R. Scott Kramer, glad he cared so much about the victim that he was supposed to be fighting for. And again, I'm not saying Edna was a perfect person, but she was a person.
Also, she's not alive. So maybe let's not, poop all over her. I was going to say a bad word, but I don't think we're supposed to curse.
Oh, I get real bad later in the episode. So.
Okay.
Yeah. But it seems like Edna would meet someone, they would move really fast, she would move in with them, or they would move in with her, and then the relationship would fizzle as quickly as it started, and Edna would leave, but, then the cycle would start over. So Edna's having a rough go at life. She doesn't need criticism, she needs help, clearly.
And again, we know that this happens when people don't have enough money to live. They move in with people out of convenience and finances over being happy in their relationship, and that is much less likely to work. Right, or safety. So their son has a place to live.
Right. 100%. This episode is foul. So what is even more frustrating, probably not more frustrating than the episode, but what's incredibly frustrating is that Edna was so close to happiness. She had finally broken the cycle of these abusive relationships, and she had stopped with the alcohol and substance dependency, and she was so damn close to her potential, happily ever after. So, as I said, Edna had been in Lancaster, Pennsylvania area the weekend she was killed. She was visiting her son. And I Googled how far between Lancaster and, the general area she was found. And Lancaster is about an hour or so southeast of Duncannon.
Okay.
So her body was about an hour-ish away from where she had been staying that weekend.
Hey, KCC listeners. So sorry to throw a wrench in your listening. However, this episode ended up being way longer than we intended. So right here, we're going to stop. And this is going to be part 1. And when we come back with part 2, we are going to pick up right here where we left off. So make sure you check back in for the story of Edna Posey, part 2. Bye.
That's all we have for this episode of the Keystone Cold Cases podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and please consider leaving us a review wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to find out more about the podcast, the host, and the cases we cover, or if you want to suggest a case, please visit us at kccpod.com or send us an email at keystonecoldcases@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook at Keystone Cold Cases and on Instagram and TikTok at kccpod. Follow us on YouTube at Keystone Cold Cases. Please remember never to reach out to family or friends of the victims, only to law enforcement if you have any tips. This episode was researched and hosted by me, Chelsea. Find all of our sources, social info, and contact information at kccpod.com. Theme music by Darren Makins and production assistance from Shannon Bickel. Join us again next week for another case to sleuth out to.